This is the 1992 Ford F-350 XLT diesel. No, that is not a Power Stroke. This is the one that they call the IDI, which stands for indirect injection. The 7.3-liter IDI actually started off its life as a 6.9-liter in 1983. It was like that until 1988 when they upped the bore on that engine to 7.3 liters. It was during these 6.9-liter times that the engine produced a whopping 170 horsepower and 315 pound-feet of torque. In 1988, when the engine was bored out to 7.3 liters, it was then producing 185 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque without a turbocharger. Yes, that's right. This engine was not turbocharged until 93 and 94, in which case the horsepower was bumped up only 5 by Ford's ratings and up to 388 pound-feet of torque. Well below today's standards, but during the time, it was only meant to help the IDI keep up on hills. F-350s like the one that I have here in a crew cab long bed dually formation with the 410 rear end had a gross vehicle weight rating with the tow package of 10,000 pounds. With the truck weighing in at around 6,700 pounds without a toolbox, that gave you about a 3,300 pound payload capacity. Decent, not great, but it got the job done. All Ford 1-ton trucks, made from 92 to 96, were capable of pulling legally a max tow rating of 12,500 pounds. They didn't differentiate between the rear hitch or fifth wheel hitch. They just simply said 12,500 pounds. However, that did not stop people from towing well in excess of that, with some YouTubers towing anywhere between 20 to 25,000 pounds with this kind of a setup that we have here. The 410 rear-end trucks, such as this dually here, were rated at 18,000 gross combined vehicle weight rating. A favorite saying among 7.3 IDI owners is, "It'll get you there, it'll just do it slowly." While not exactly known as a powerhouse, especially amongst the non-turbocharged versions, the 7.3 IDI does have a specialty: longevity. These engines are known to go for hundreds of thousands of miles, some examples ranging all the way into the millions, with very minimal maintenance, aside from an injector pump being replaced every couple 100,000 miles. These engines are truly very stout and well capable of lasting for years and years and years. The IDI is typically known for running fairly cool. On any given occasion, this is about what the temperature gauge rises to when I'm fully warmed up. Not very high, is it? That is, unless, of course, we're towing. The temperature gauge will tend to rise a little higher than that when towing anything in excess of 3,000 to 4,000 pounds. This is the heart of the beast. This is the 7.3-liter IDI engine. Quite different from a Power Stroke. As you can see, this one does not have a turbocharger anywhere. Rather, it just simply has an air cleaner. A couple of problems you might run into with these is, later on in life, some of the fuel hoses tend to get a little bit old and they start to crack. Also, these caps right here, these injector caps, plastic. The plastic, obviously, isn't exactly the best idea on a diesel, but it's what we have to work with. They also have a tendency to crack and to leak, as this one here, actually, seems to be doing a fairly decent job of. See, it's a little shiny. Regardless, Not too bad. The changing out of those particular items isn't exactly a difficult procedure. Just requires removing that big old air cleaner right there, which, as you can see, a single wing nut will do the job. It just removes and pulls right out of the way. Another thing, the injector pumps on these do wear out, and over time they have a tendency to kind of retard the timing. Another common failure on the 7.3 IDI tends to be the glow plugs, which is where a lot of the bad start rumors tend to occur for this truck. The glow plugs in these things aren't exactly the most stout glow plugs, and you, especially if you're going to replace them, do not want to replace them with anything other than the Motorcraft or International part. Anything else is likely going to break off inside of that lovely little tiny chamber there and leave you with a headache that you're not going to want to deal with. Also, the controller for the glow plugs, which is located behind this air cleaner right here, tends to go bad as well. There are a lot of people who will wire up a manual switch inside the cab to turn the glow plugs on and off. But honestly, if you just simply take care of the glow plug system and keep it up to date, it won't give you any hassle. Of course, we can't have an F-350 review video that has a 7.3 IDI in it without addressing one of the biggest elephants under the hood. Cavitation, or as it's otherwise known, blockworm, tends to plague these engines more in spirit nowadays than anything, as most of them have kind of aged out. If you're going to have cavitation, by now you probably would have had it. Nevertheless, not saying it can't still happen, some lower mileage units, such as this one here, haven't quite gotten to the point to where they would, quote, age out of it, end quote. Nevertheless, something that you can do to prevent blockworm or cavitation is to simply have SCA charged coolant hiding in your radiator. That's one of the best things that you can do for these trucks. Enough about the engine though. On to the interior of the 92 to 96 F-350. I guess I shouldn't say 92 to 96. They did update the seats a little later on, where you have not quite so much of a straight bench. The center section will fold down in those, but we don't have that luxury in this truck. As a matter of fact, we don't even have the full luxury of electric windows in the back. The back windows on any of the pre-95 trucks will have crank windows. It wasn't until 95 through 97 that you wound up with power windows all the way throughout. However, who needs power windows everywhere? Inside of the F-350, we have our usual 6-gauge cluster here with our tach, speedometer, amp meter, oil gauge, temperature gauge, and gas gauge. Oops, that's not a gas gauge. Silly me. Wow, the sun sure likes to mess with me. That says diesel fuel, doesn't it? Anyways, yes, of course it says diesel fuel. So, since it's getting hot in here, let's do a standard old start. Now see, that wasn't too bad, was it? These trucks don't start too bad at all. As a matter of fact, if you don't have air intrusion in your lines, your fuel lines that is, and you have a pretty good glow plug system going, these trucks will start just as good as any other truck out there. It's just a matter of taking care of your glow plug system and making sure you don't have air intrusion in your fuel lines, which once every 2 or 3 years, it's good to update your fuel lines anyways, especially if you live in a hot climate like I do here down in Florida. It gets toasty down here. In 92 and 93, you still had R12 coolant cooling through the AC vents. This one, however, has been updated to 134A, as it is a fairly old system. Works pretty good though. Ah, that feels nice. Anyhow, back in the days of this truck, factory installed brake controllers weren't a thing. So you had to install your own, which that's fine. This Takancha Primus works pretty good for me. As far as the rest of the factory options are concerned, You do get your standard AM/FM stereo. Some came with a cassette player, and that was just fine. Power locks, power windows. Some trucks had power mirrors, but most came with these big tow mirrors here, which is great. I kind of did a custom setup on mine, and if you'd like me to show that to you, I can do that in a later clip. All of the trucks of this vintage came with dual tanks, both 19 gallons, and of course we have cruise control here on the steering wheel. In the trucks that came with an automatic transmission, you got the E40D or the C6. And the way you can tell if you have an E40D or a C6 is to look at this. This one has an overdrive off switch, which I don't know if you could tell if that light was on in the sunlight. Pretty bad lighting where I'm at here. Otherwise, you would have yourself a Z5 5-speed manual transmission. A customer installed option that I have are some cup holders. Can't do without some cup holders now. These trucks did not come with cup holders from the factory. The youngest of the trucks of this body style, the 97, is going on 25 years old now. These trucks are getting older and older, so more and more people are starting to look at these as collectible or classic. At some point, good condition vehicles with the correct engine and options and everything, I wouldn't be surprised if they reach some pretty high prices, but that is what it is. So if you want to get one of these of your own, now is the right time to buy. So I guess that wraps up this review of the 92 F-350 crew cab, long bed, dually, diesel. There's a lot of options there, just talking about it. If you guys would like to see any more videos of this nature, reviews, I might be able to come up with another car review pretty soon. But as far as that's concerned, we have the 92 F-350 IDI. And there's those mirrors that I was promising. Hopefully y'all have enjoyed this review. Until next time, this is Tim signing off.